Hi, everyone. This is Taya, the managing editor at Photomasters, and I'm here with Ian Clant, the founder of Photomasters.
Hey, Taya. Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Great. Today, we're going to be talking about watermarks in photography. Ian, I would love to know your opinions on this. We're going to share some of our thoughts on watermarks, the cons of using them, and a few other things. But first, let's start with an introduction. So, Ian, how would you define a watermark in photography?
Well, so a watermark is either your signature or some other symbol. It's a mark, kind of a brand that you put on your photos. And the idea is that it's discreet, but that it's also visible so that people who are looking at your photos online in particular know that you are the photographer that took the photo.
Have you ever used a watermark yourself or not?
Yes, I have used watermarks in the past. I'm not currently using them, and I can discuss in greater detail the reasons for that.
So, Ian, what would be the reasons that someone would want to use a watermark in the first place?
Well, so I think the reasons are twofold. So the reasons I hear people talk about when they're talking about watermarks, the reasons they give for using watermarks, the first one is to protect their intellectual property, to try to prevent copyright theft of their photographs. And the second reason is just to make sure that each photo that they put out there into the wild west that is the internet has their brand, has their mark on it, so that no matter where it ends up, people will know that you are the original photographer.
Yeah, I think those are good reasons for using watermarks. I've never used them myself because I felt that I could never create a proper design that would stand out but also be discreet. And I also found that even if I did use watermarks occasionally, very rarely, people crop them out. People find ways to crop them out.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk in more detail about these two reasons why people use them. So the first one, which is preventing copyright theft, theft of one's photos. I've always felt that that was probably not a very good reason to use a watermark because it is easy for people to crop them out or just make a selection of the watermark and do a generative fill. You can easily get rid of it using available technology. And so the copyright isn't likely to be protected by the watermark. If someone wants to steal your photos, they're going to go ahead and steal it. I would say that a watermark is maybe the equivalent of putting a cheap padlock on your bicycle to prevent people from stealing your bike. So it might prevent casual thieves who don't have a means of breaking the lock. But any serious bike thief is going to carry around some sort of tool that's going to allow them to get rid of your cheap lock easily and steal your bike. And so the watermark might prevent some casual thieves from taking your photo, but chances are anyone who really wants to get it is going to figure out a way to get it. So I think the better reason for using a watermark is to make sure that your photo is clearly identified as being yours when it gets out there on the internet. And, the internet, as I said earlier, is kind of like the Wild West. And when you put photos on the internet, chances are someone somewhere is going to use them without permission. A lot of the times it's not outright theft. It might just be people who see your image up on Facebook and say, wow, I really like that photo. And they right click and copy it. And then they post it on their Facebook timeline and say, look at this amazing photo. They're not trying to steal your work necessarily. They just don't know any better. They're just trying to share an amazing photo. And so you get a lot of that on the internet. And then, of course, you do have other nefarious actors who are actively looking to steal content and use it for commercial purposes. There's not much you can really do once you kind of let your image go free and it's swimming in the internet to prevent that sort of thing. But one of the reasons why people post on the internet is the hope that their content will go viral, that people will see it, they'll like it, they'll share it. And before you know it, you've got millions of people around the world looking at your amazing photos saying, ooh and ah. And that's what you want, that virality. And so having the watermark in your image, it ensures that if your photo does go viral, that there's always going to be that mark that lets people know. So if there's another photographer looking at your photo and they're like, wow, this is an amazing photo. I really want to learn from this person, for example. I really want to, I want a big print of this. I want to buy it. They see your watermark, they can always find you.
Definitely. Yeah, a few years ago, this was right when I started taking photos, actually. So this was over a decade ago. There was one of my friends sent me a message on Facebook and she said, hi, I saw one of your photos in a popular YouTube video, but you're not credited in it. And the only reason I realized it was you because I'm familiar with this photo and I know that you took it. So I reached out to the owner of that video and I asked them to credit me in the description. And they were genuinely apologetic. They didn't mean to steal my photograph. As Ian says, oftentimes people just do it because they like a certain photo and then they credited me. But if I had a watermark, maybe it would have been easier to find me. Now, of course, maybe there's no excuse because you can use image reverse searches to find the owner of a photograph. But in my experience, sometimes even that doesn't lead to the original creator of an image or an illustration. So yeah, it's not always very easy to find the original owner without a watermark.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really kind of how the internet operates. People share content, they copy and paste content and mash it together with other things. And that's just how it works. And to some extent, we're all hoping to capitalize on that. We're hoping that by putting our content into the current, that it'll end up someplace interesting. And so the watermark is just a great way of ensuring that when the content you've put out there gets stripped from that original context, you putting it up on social media or sharing it on a website or something like that, once it's stripped of that original context, then it might be making the rounds. It might be seen by millions of people, but they don't know who took the photo. And so the watermark ensures that you're always easily identified. Chances are the people who are reusing the content, they're not going to go through any effort to try to find you. That's just not how the internet works. And so if you've got the watermark, once your work is untethered from the original context, there's still an opportunity for people who do want to see more of your work or learn more from you, or perhaps purchase something. They can track you down and find you.
I think ultimately it's up to the photographer. If someone feels uncomfortable putting their work out there without a watermark, by all means, I say do it. Just make sure you create a nice and discreet watermark. And if you check out the accompanying article in the description, then I have a short Lightroom tutorial on how you can do that.
Yeah, and let's talk about why someone might want to not use a watermark. And I know for me personally, I just stopped doing it because it was kind of a pain in the rear end. I was spending a lot of time putting watermarks on my images, and I just decided, you know what, this is wasting my time. I'm not going to even bother with it. And it was also kind of an annoying process because you could just put the watermark in the same place on every photo, every time you send them out to make things easier. But a lot of times the watermark might be blocking something important in the composition, or because you're trying to keep it discreet, you don't have it at like 100% opacity, you're reducing the opacity. It might end up in a place in the composition where there's a lot going on and you just can't see the watermark. And so I was spending all this time trying to figure out where to place the watermark in each image to make sure that it wasn't blocking something important in the composition. Figuring out what opacity to use so that it would be visible, not too visible, but not invisible. And so I just stopped doing it. And that's just for me. So, I mean, I really think that the one reason to do it is to make sure that you always get some credit when your image is shared and reused, that the watermark will preserve the ability of anyone who wants to figure out who you are. They'll know that that photo is associated with you, assuming someone doesn't strip your watermark out. So that said, I just think that it's up to every individual photographer. I think some photographers like having a watermark because they put some effort into finding a good watermark and they do it for branding purposes. They've got really cool looking watermarks. So you were talking about how you could never come up with a watermark that you liked. I've had the same problem with my name, Ian Plant. It doesn't lend itself to a really nice signature or a really nice watermark. I mean, if some photographers go with their initials to create a watermark, IP is not exactly a good set of initials. So I pretty much gave up trying to develop a nice looking watermark because my name just doesn't fit it. So there's reasons to do it. There's reasons not to do it. Ultimately, it's up to each individual photographer.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Ian, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on watermarks with the audience. It was interesting to discuss this with you, and I hope this video gave the viewers a better idea of whether they should pursue watermarks or not in their photography.
My pleasure, Talia. I'm not sure that we added any clarity to this debate. We probably muddled the waters even more, but I'm glad to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Bye-bye.